Well, it's nice to meet everybody. My name is Kirby. I currently work for Reebok in the influencer marketing and partnership strategy team, running a lot of Reebok's global campaigns for the last 2 years on the influencer front. And during quarantine, I'm like a period historical fiction nerd. So The Crown and Bridgerton and anything that falls within those types of categories, I die at all the costumes and just watching how the world worked back then. So those have been my binge-worthy series.
Great. And Alessandro?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I am Alessandro Bogliari. I'm the CEO and co-founder of the Influencer Marketing Factory. We are a global influencer marketing agency. We mostly specialize in TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And regarding the questions for the TV show, I mean, many, I'd say, but one that is not from this year, but really, I don't like I binge watched it, to be honest. It is a Succession. I felt in love with it. I loved it. Definitely my top 5, I'd say, ever. And if someone here still didn't watch it, I definitely recommend it. It's a great show in my opinion.
Great, yeah, and definitely Succession fan here. And if anyone in the chat has their own favorite lockdown Netflix or other show, yeah, let us know. It's always good to hear what other people are watching. And David?
Yeah, hello everyone. Thanks again for having me. So I currently work for the Go Agency, and we are a global influencer agency that specializes basically in end-to-end service. So we do everything from the creative and the strategy right down to the influencer sourcing to the running of the campaign. And we are based around London, Singapore, and New York. And in terms of the Netflix show, obviously there's not really been much else to do. So I've been kind of getting invested in The Queen's Gambit and currently watching a German show called Dark.
Okay, it's a new one. You're hitting us with the esoteric. Yeah, I think most of us have seen the Queen's Gambit by now. Well, great. Well, let's kick off into this panel then. So, I've got a question for Purvi. You're an influencer marketing veteran, you might say. And according to my notes, you started out in 2013, and you've been sort of going since then. So, maybe tell us a bit about your sort of journey in influencer marketing, and how did you get into it, so early on, and how has it evolved?
Yeah, so prior to my time at Reebok, I worked at another smaller footwear brand named Sperry, and I was running custom marketing programs for our trade and wholesale partners because the business was primarily wholesale driven. And I was assigned one of our youth channel accounts that has, hundreds of doors in malls across the US, and, tasked with coming up with very specific marketing programs for their target consumer, which was very different than the general consumer that Sperry was really going after. And through that, I decided that potentially a great route would be jumping on this influencer wagon in 2013, and that was when we were partnering more so with the whole blog community, when there was a bunch of women fashion bloggers and YouTubers. I laugh at some of the people that we partnered with because I can't afford them anymore because they've blown up so much in partnerships and they've almost become celebrities. But we started testing out campaigns even before, swipe up links and all that kind of stuff with just special makeup shoes that were available at the retailer, so we could really kind of test to see if there was, growth and a spike in just traffic to the site in terms of those products. And through that, we realized that this is something that has some wheels and we should be doing more of. So then I moved over to the brand side on the brand, away from just doing it for wholesale retailers, but also just holistically doing for the brand. And from there, it's been built out from everything from working with affiliate marketing things like reward style to custom programs and agencies like the Go Agency and other agencies that are full service. One-on-one kind of operational excellence of how to do influencer contracts, especially early on, making sure that we were protected on both sides. And then from there, it's kind of just gone on and just being personally interested in kind of staying at the tip of the spear and making sure that whatever brand I work for, we're kind of testing and learning earlier on, before it becomes the big thing, so that we have a point of view and a position.
Got it. And so you started off, as you say, another footwear brand, and then you've moved on to Reebok, and you're involved in Reebok's first creator-led influencer campaign. Can you sort of tell us a bit about that? And I hear it was pretty successful.
Yeah, so that was our first foray into TikTok. So TikTok was a big buzzword in 2019 for us, trying to figure out how we wanted to get involved, and we weren't quite ready to make the jump to have a brand channel yet, just because of the level of investment that you need, kind of a digital producer really tying to that content from a brand perspective. So instead, we decided to go the creator route. And through that, in early 2020, I was reached out to by Sway House Talent X, who manages one of those TikTok houses. This is pre-pandemic. It seems like a lifetime ago. And we decided to do a custom marketing program with them, with 16 different TikTok creators across a 3-week span, really promoting this one big marketing launch on a specific product called the Zig that we were bringing to market. And what I loved about the campaign was not only did we see unreal impressions and all that kind of stuff, but it really paved the groundwork for actually Reebok launching their own TikTok channel a few months after that. And then also now incorporating TikTok into every influencer program that we do, whether it's launching a Cardi B shoe or a collab or, inline commercial product that we need to promote. Doing it through the creator's lens and allowing for creativity and not dictating too much exactly what they need to do and limiting it, we've seen a lot of success.
Great. Well, that's a really interesting journey from fashion bloggers through to TikTok. And yeah, it's really interesting. So Alessandro, you started off doing influence, I think, was it on YouTube and Insta, I think, and have evolved into TikTok. So, how did you get involved in this platform?
Yeah, definitely. When we started the agency a couple of years ago, we started, offering YouTube and Instagram as many others. But I was myself and I'm still a big fan of YouTube. I'm watching tons of compilations of videos. And in late 2018, I start seeing, watching these compilations. They were called TikTok cringy compilations. Back in the days, it was furries, it was gamers. It was totally different, I'd say, environment than what it is today nowadays TikTok. But we saw a big opportunity. We saw blue ocean. Tons of people were just saying, "Oh, it's a kids app. It's gonna go away." But I don't know. I was myself a big fan of Vine. I was I was just looking for something different. Instagram reach, the organic reach was going down a lot day by day. And TikTok was offering this new place for everyone. It was already super inclusive. It was about no matter who you are, you can get tons of views, thanks to your being yourself. And so we saw that opportunity. We started offering that. And one of our first hashtag challenges, this was early 2019, that seriously in TikTok is 20 years, right? We did our first campaign with Sony Music. It was to launch an artist, and hashtag challenges were still at the beginning, I'd say. And we did some experiments, some tests on that. After that, we got Universal Music, Warner Music Group, and then many other amazing clients. But it's been, to be honest, so fun and entertaining to see how on TikTok every single day there is a new trend. Every single week there is something new, and how no matter what, really who you are, you can get under the spotlight. If you have 10,000 followers, but the For You page helps you with the algorithm to get in front of more people. So it's really, in my opinion, one of the most democratic and meritocratic social media now. And also, it's so easy to talk with Gen Z, especially because nowadays you don't want to buy anymore because of a banner or because someone is telling you to what to do, right? So if you find the right way to be still fun, entertaining, sometimes even in a professional way, you can do a video on TikTok. You can still kill it. So long story short, we saw that 2 years ago. I personally felt in love with it. We said, let's go 100% in it. We bet on it, I have to say. But now the markets are saying that we made the right call. And I personally can't wait to see the future of it. We're looking now into social commerce on TikTok and all the new integrations and the future about it. So yeah, I've been 2 years, pretty interesting. And again, 2 years on TikTok is I'd say 20, 30 years in for a lot of other industries.
Great. And David Goat has been around for a while doing influencer stuff. How's it sort of TikTok burst onto your world, and what have you been doing on TikTok?
Yeah, so it was quite like a natural progression for us, just because at Go, the average age of our staff is around 24. So we were just naturally using it, trying it on our own. But a bit of a different route. We actually started working with TikTok as one of our clients. And this was at a point when we were really helping to drive like creators across Instagram to get them to start using the app properly. And then in doing so, this was trying to incentivize their followers to sort of sign up. And this was probably at a time, maybe 2 years ago, when TikTok just wasn't really being taken seriously. I don't think it was being taken seriously by like brands or the creators themselves. It was sort of seen as like very immature. The content was it was seen as very cringy in terms of like the dance content. But what we've managed to do with them as an actual platform is really achieve this position as a platform that is filled with more diverse content than any other platform. Perhaps maybe not as much as YouTube, but that's only because they've been around for decades and decades longer.
Great. Okay, so let's start off with a question. When we're thinking about this universe of TikTok influencers, and yeah, there's people ranging from people with hundreds of millions to maybe a few followers. How do you break it down? How do you segment it? How do you analyze it? Purvi, maybe you can sort of give us a kick off, and how do you make sense of this dynamic, always changing, and huge platform, and identify people to work with?
Yeah, it's been a learning moment, honestly, because it is so different, I would say, from your traditional YouTube and Instagram. Like followers on Instagram to followers on TikTok, and how much you pay people, and how much content lives based on how it's not, timeline oriented on TikTok of when you're fed videos. It's been a learning experience in terms of how we've approached it. What I will say is the creators that we make sure that we partner with at all times is what we're fitting from a brand scenario of who we're trying to target. And so in that case, it's been much more of that older Gen Z, younger millennial. And part of it is some of the fun challenges and doing the transfer, the transition and some of those fun things. But then also part of it's been education and teaching and hitting on those trends on TikTok for like the more millennial consumer who's really learning how to DIY and do all sorts of things while they've been stuck in this pandemic, and capitalizing on showing that Reebok's involved authentically in ways that we're not dictating the content too much, but that we are partnering with the right people who can tell our story in their own unique way.
Right, so you're looking at kind of different interest groups, which might not necessarily be something to do with, fashion, or you're looking at different kind of, themes or types. Yeah. Yeah,
it's very, we're not looking at like, hey, I'm only looking for a micro influencer that has a following of blah, blah, blah and under for these, deliverables. The TikTok work that we've done has been a lot more just different and varies depending on who the creator is and the reason why we're partnering with them for the content that they're creating. So it's been a little bit less kind of framework, let's go find 10 influencers that do this, and more so of like reviewing people one-on-one. To a certain degree, until we kind of find our mojo and figure out exactly what works for us, because we are still kind of testing it every day.
Right. So it's more about finding an individual that could work rather than, different vertical or as you say, just kind of, it's finding someone almost on a one-to-one basis.
Right. Yep.
And Alessandro, how do you sort of segment the TikTok influencer market? How do you work with clients to find the right people, categorize influencers, and engage with them?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I do agree what just said about that is a bit different from other social media. So if we think about let's say Instagram, right? Demographics are really important because you have your funnel, right? You have, let's say, 1 million of followers. Some part of that is going to get the organic reach, but more or less already the demographics. That's because maybe some platforms that you use with sampling, so you can have an idea, or if the influencer is giving directly the data to you. So that more or less that is what you can expect. But because of the, let's call it reverse funnel in a way of TikTok, you can have 10,000 followers but get seen by, let's say, 10 millions of people. Who are these people? Well, you really cannot know before, starting a campaign, right? you can imagine based on the algorithm that it's going to try to get to similar people that have the same interest. But to be honest, sometimes maybe I watch videos that are not really like, my number one, interest, but I still watch that and I enjoy that. Am I in the right demographic? Not really, maybe, but I still enjoy the video and I might share it with someone. So I think that, just to say what said before, I do share the same view in terms that with TikTok, demographics, in my opinion, at this moment is not that a priority. It is to understand each single case. What is the quality of the content? How many times a person goes to the For You page? Because you can easily have 2 million followers, but we saw some cases where because of any shadow ban or any other type of things that happened, they maybe were getting, let's say, 200,000. But you're still paying for the 2 million, right? Because the influencer is saying, hey, I have these numbers, I want this money. So it's always important to ask them how many times, maybe every week or in a month, they go to the For You page, so you can have an understanding. Because at the end of the day, the clients want to be happy in saying, I'm paying this money, I want to have more of a possibility, right, statistically speaking, to get to the For You page and get all that, user-generated content, all that earned media that you can have on TikTok. So I'd say that we're still in that phase where you have to work a lot, qualitatively speaking, more than on numbers and metrics, I'd say. It might change when now TikTok announced the affiliation links. And so in that case, we're going to look more into the typical CPC, CPA, CPL, all these metrics. But at this moment, I think that it's super important to understand the person behind the TikTok, because it can give you so many information about the type of audience, the comments, and so on and so on. So it's quite time consuming, let's say, more than other platforms. But if you spend a bit more time on that, you can have drastic, increase in terms of views and shares if you spend the right time in understanding who is the person that is going to promote a certain video.
So you really got to dig into the data and analytics, and a bit like Purvi was saying, try and look in detail at each individual rather than looking across. And David, does that chime with how you look at the influencer market on TikTok? How do you guys analyze it?
Yeah, so obviously, I think with content on TikTok specifically, it can seem a bit more random and it can seem a bit more difficult to categorize, but we're still aligning these influencers very much the same we are with YouTube and Instagram. You've got your fashion, you've got your beauty, your travel, parenting, but then what we're also finding is there are a lot more niche communities and sub-communities within TikTok. For example, I got fed the other day by someone who specializes in board games specifically. But then what we typically want to do is we always want to be looking first, especially from an agency point of view when we're working with brands, we want to first look to the audience demographics. So who does this brand want to engage with in terms of the gender, the country, the age? Then we're going to look further into the brand personality. So what does your brand say about you? What is your tone of voice? What do you feel like your personality is? And this will really help us align with that vertical. And then lastly, and most importantly, is always that influencer performance. So at Go, we always try to look beyond the vanity metrics, which is your following and your engagement. And we want to look deeper and into this performance data, which is your click-through rates and your conversions. And then we really want to make sure that we are choosing the right influencers to not only align with your personality and your brand, but the ones that are going to be driving those results and hitting those campaign KPIs.
Got it. And are you using any specific tools for search and discovery? Are you using the creator marketplace? So we don't actually use the creator marketplace only because over the last 7 years, we've been building our in-house CRM database. And this basically just has all of our previous campaign data from the previous 7 years. And this is basically a backlog of data on which influencers are performing well. And then we can even refine this further based upon the CPC, the CPM, the CPV. Got it. And is that chime with the others on the panel? How are you dealing with influencer search and discovery?
On the Reebok side, we haven't been using Creator Marketplace either. We actually just recently this year invested in a tool called CreatorIQ as a brand. So historically, Reebok has worked with agencies, full service, and it was activation to activation. So there was no source of truth. So really, I made the kind of the pitch internally saying that we need to invest in our own subscription tool that our agencies then have access to and use, so that we have a world of truth in terms of who we've partnered with, both globally, different markets, and making sure that there's like that source of truth of like, you know, we can put feedback in that's only for Reebok eyes of like who's performed well, who hasn't, who's easy to work with, who really hits the mark for X, Y, and Z product. So we invested in a tool called CreatorIQ on a global level.
Got it. Alessandro, are you using Creator Marketplace or your own tools or third-party tools?
Yeah, so the Creator Marketplace, we've been one of the first, I think, beta testers, you know, when they started, and we played around with it. I remember back in the days, there were like just a few US TikTokers, then they started like, you know, building up. But to be honest, you know, we also build our own CRM internally. So you have your internal notes between campaign managers, and maybe something that you don't want to, or you won't find publicly. You know, like from pricing, you know, something that you can find publicly is something on platform, and something else it is when you do negotiation, right? And that is super important. We also do and use certain platforms, but we also have our own TikTokers US based that we represent. So it's a combination of things. And whenever it comes to, of course, like, you know, global campaigns, we usually have at least one agency partnership in different countries. So for example, whenever it comes to language barrier, we have a person and point of contact in each country, and it helps to scale up, right, each campaign easily. So let's say if you had to look for the Russian market, something it is to talk with 50 different, like, you know, people in Russia, and you might have some difficulties, but if you have a partner there, it's going to be easier. So I'd say it's a combination, and when you are like a full service agency, all the time you have to look at different perspectives. Could be your own TikTokers, platforms, internal CRM. I think that, like, you know, when you build month by month, at the end you have like data that just, I think, agencies do. And yeah, so it's, again, a mix of different things.
Got it. And in terms of the actual outreach, we already had a previous speaker going to the lengths of using Instagram as a back channel to communicate with people. Are people using that or tools or direct messaging on TikTok, or is it, again, all about the personal relationship? Or
I would say it's all of the above. It's if you have a relationship with the person already and we have their email address or their agent and manager, if they have that, we reach out directly or through our, you know, agencies that we use for more white glove service. But there's been plenty of times where we've also direct messaged people from the Reebok account just to be like, hey, we're interested, shoot us an email, and then we'll loop you into the right, you know, team, because you know, when you find somebody really great, just because you don't have a direct relationship with them, we have no problem kind of reaching out and trying to get in contact with them to be part of a campaign.
Got it. Anything to add from the others?
Yeah. I may sound a bit biased, but I definitely think it's important to find an agency or a company that really has that large network. I think we're very lucky that we, over the last 7 years, have built those relationships with both influencers and the talent managers. So when it comes to contacting them, it's very easy for us to do so, as well as choosing the right influencers. But for anyone listening who perhaps doesn't have those resources, then it's very simple to outreach via bio. Most influencers will have an email in their bio or something directing straight to a talent manager.
Got it. And so to play back what I'm hearing from you on the influencer universe, it's not about going out there campaign by campaign and grabbing a load of people and you know, influencers, working with them and then discarding them. It's about building relationships. It's about a one-on-one relationship, and it's either through yourself or third parties, and kind of building up a real kind of deep relationship with people that you can then sort of deploy on your campaigns.
Yeah, I think something that a lot of brands tend to forget is that influencers are real people. They're not just a ticket gate to an easy sale or an ad. So it's really important that we really nourish those relationships between our agency, the brand, and the influencers. And that's really going to ensure that we have the best possible quality content that is going to look as authentic as possible. And that is ultimately what's going to lead to you engaging with your target audience and driving acquisition. Got
it. So now we're turning to the actual campaigns or creatives. You know, where does that start? Does that start with an idea, with a theme? Purvi, you're probably dealing with, maybe there's a overarching campaign, or, you know, are you doing TikTok specific stuff, jumping on memes? You know, how do you think about creatives and campaigns?
Yeah, most of our work is we look at what our big products are that are launching. So we do have, it's a dual approach, kind of like what David had mentioned, of like, there are the creators that we want to stay in continuous contact with, while and some of them that we work with on a long-term basis, and having an agency support, keeping those, you know, relationships going, and letting, you know, everybody know what the deal is for future campaigns. But there is a level of, you know, we are selling products, so there are some campaigns that happen just, hey, we want you for this specific product drop, and just being super transparent and looking at what, you know, what the deliverables are and what they're looking to do, and making sure that at least the storytelling is as clear and makes sense for their own unique audience. But from a seasonal perspective, we have our big ideas that we need to brief our agency supports on in terms of what we want to bring to life. And from there, we work hand in hand with them to come up with the creative prompts in the CTAs of what we're looking to do. And then each influencer will then massage it based on, you know, what their forte is and what their niche audience really cares about, and how they speak to the specific product. But we work campaign to campaign, and then we have a little bit of an always on model as well.
And is that playing off across all the different social and influencer platforms, or is there something kind of unique twist for TikTok?
So in the beginning, when we first started with TikTok, we did TikTok first campaigns only, but now most influencers, while they might be biggest on TikTok, they have an Instagram. So there is a level of cross-pollination. We don't use they're not copy and paste the content that they use on one channel to the other, but if they have multiple accounts that they are active on, the deliverables list for them includes all of their kind of channels for the most part, so that it ties in a clean thread and consistency approach. So we don't just brief anymore with just like, hey, we're only going to reach out to TikTok creators. We kind of look at it, what is our ultimate goal in terms of what we're trying to produce and what we're trying to get across. And then from there, depending on where that creator has a strength, or where we can cross-pollinate and have them maybe do a couple things on different channels, we'll do that.
Got it. And Alessandro, is that sort of similar to how you see it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, when it comes to, you know, each client has a different, view, of course, right, of TikTok. There are the ones that are really building up on that and understand what does it mean, like the culture of memes and sub-layers behind like every single TikTok. There are some TikToks that have 6 different references, you know, to what is happening in the world and TV show. There are tons of things. And some clients, they want to recreate that. Some others, they want to, maybe they are still trying, like in the educational phase where they're understanding what is TikTok. If it was for me, every TikTok would be like every promotional TikTok should be sort of like an organic TikTok. But that is the idea. Unfortunately, whenever it comes to like a promotion, there are so many steps, right? And finding let's do the storytelling, creative idea, and you know it already takes some time. Pitch it to the client. Go back and do the roster of potential, so it takes time. And contracting, negotiation, management of the campaign. The meme or the trend of the week, it's boom, it's gone. You maybe have done the storytelling. And as I said before, 1 week on TikTok is like ages. If you get on a meme trend, like 2 weeks later, it's like why? Like, no, you're so late on this, and actually could be, I don't want to say counter-effective on that, because maybe it would be too much, but then there is always the problem of the brand trying to jump on a trend just because. And Gen Z are not stupid. I mean, like, they understand if there is like a big push on that, and they are like, they are super native. The same also for millennials. And so like, they understand if the type of content that has been created, it was just because of the promotion or because they want really to get on that. And again, I think that if you're working maybe sometimes if you're having in-house, it's a bit easier for some brands to get on that. I personally, I like a lot Ryanair on TikTok. They usually take a trend like the same day and they make it a video, but most probably because it's their own brand there, right? Whenever you work with, let's say, 10 influencers, you're waiting for a reply here, you're waiting for something like that. So the idea, it's always, everyone starts with the best idea ever, And then unfortunately things happens during that, and maybe you cannot really make the TikTok that you had in mind. I think that is still for a lot of brands, is still the educational phase and understanding that you don't have to dictate on what to do, that you should trust the influencers, because the brand know the brand itself, of course, but the influencers know their own audience. They are the only ones that they know the audience. They know what it will work. And sometimes maybe some brands, they're a bit skeptical on a certain content just because they do not understand it. And they want to do maybe the same they are seeing on Instagram. It just won't work. You cannot take the same and do it on different medium. You have to create it all the single time for each of them. And especially, I'd say, for TikTok. Like if you miss that part, you can even invest tons of money. Again, the community that is number one, I think, on TikTok, they're gonna see that, and you won't just get the same results, So, again, it's a bit complicated, complex on some things, but I can see more and more brands that are not just investing more money, but having also the right people in the company, just investing and focusing on that specific, that is TikTok.
Yeah, it's really hard to be nimble. The bigger the brand, the harder it is to jump on some of these trends, because it's just layers and layers of approval. And then you run into, if somebody uses a music and you don't have license to it as a brand, and then you have an influencer doing content for you, they're going to come after the brand. So there's just so many layers that we don't necessarily, from a Reebok perspective, jump on every trend, because we also, again, like Alessandro had said, it might not come off really authentic anyways, as it is. By the time we get our ducks in a row, just because that's just how it works when you're a larger brand, the moment's passed.
Is that your experience, David? People coming to you, with a kind of big campaign theme that they want executed on social media and with influencers? Or are they, becoming more agile, as Alessandro said, and being more willing to adapt to the platform?
Yeah, I think brands have really just got to learn that these influencers, as has already been said, they understand more so than anyone how this platform works and what the people are doing. In terms of the actual trend, though, I think sometimes when we talk about trends, we automatically think about challenges, and sometimes a trend can be something as very simple as a style of content. Or a great example I find was with the Gucci model challenge. So basically what you have is, in the fashion vertical, you've got this big trend of fashion influencers creating very serious content in the terms of what I would wear to a Gucci fashion show, what I'd wear as a Gucci model. And then on the flip side, what you've got these comedy influencers who are duetting these videos, but in a bit of a more playful way, poking fun at the Gucci style. And this is a great example of a brand who is actually listening to what's going on and listening to the trends that are working. And what they did was, the easy approach would be for Gucci to align with the fashion influencers. Instead, what they did was they aligned and collaborated with the comedy influencers and actually got them to be a Gucci model for the day. And they took over this Gucci model challenge and made it their own. And then through that, they then bought the rights to the content that the influencer created and repurposed it on their own channel. So whilst, yes, a lot of brands may see a trend as something hard to jump on, I think you just have to figure out what the right type of trend is.
Got it. So that's interesting. So you're saying that evolution is a two-way relationship. You don't just come with a top-down campaign and execute it. It's about feedback, seeing what's happening out there in the market, putting something in there, and then even creating some loops between you and what's actually happening on the platform.
Yeah, especially from an agency point of view, something that we don't have the luxury of is obviously understanding the brand as much as someone who works in-house. So what we tend to do is we always want to do a real deep dive into the understanding the brand and their audience. Then we want to be looking at what the competitors are doing, so what they're doing well, what they're doing bad, and using these insights to move our strategy forward. Then you want to be looking at, what we've said, obviously what's trending, what's being said online, and then from there you can really gain those valuable campaign insights, and that really just helps us with our direction of both the creative and the strategy.
And have you seen that, Pervy, where you've put something out there and it's fed back in new ways that you haven't expected and made you adapt your own messaging or campaign or given you new ideas?
Yeah, more so in terms of how even people have commented on some of the creator, you could actually learn a lot of unique things in terms of what people are commenting on these TikTok creator videos. And you might even come up with an idea just off of the playful nature of like the comments, which is a wealth of knowledge, in my opinion. If you have the ability to kind of scroll through, you might be able to pick up on some, unique opportunities or a way to make fun of yourself or somehow figure out a way to challenge or kind of throw shade potentially, but in a playful way that is allowed on TikTok, that you can kind of have a little bit of a brand personality on that platform than you can on your potential brand Instagram account, for example.
Great. Okay, we've got a few questions, so hopefully we'll get to that in a minute. But just to sort of work our way through this kind of structure, when you've got your campaign, you've got your creatives, how are you briefing this out to people? You've already talked about having a close relationship. How do you strike a balance between getting them to do what you want to do and getting the key messages in there, getting the details, the hashtags, the tagging, all of that stuff in place, and the right hooks versus letting them be creative? What's the best way of getting that sort of creative tension going in terms of the brief and how you communicate?
I would honestly say that a big part of it is giving these influencers creative freedom. As we've obviously mentioned a couple of times, they understand their content, they understand their audience, they understand the platform. But what we obviously want to do is we still need them to understand the brand, the direction of the campaign. So we will typically create a very extensive briefing document, which will provide all of the brand guidelines, the do's and don'ts, the tone of voice. And this will also include the likes of the USPs and the messaging that the client wants to get across. And then once that's sort of into play, our campaigns team will do like multiple check-ins with the influencer. They'll do a proper one-on-one briefing with them. And then there will also be like multiple rounds of approvals in terms of the actual content before it gets signed off. We always put it into the contracts that the influencers are never allowed to just share or create and share their content. They always have to send it to us first. We then approve it based upon what the client has asked us and set us. And then once that's all approved, it goes live.
Yeah, that's exactly how we operate. Our agency really helps facilitate that. We review all the briefing documents to ensure like the quick hits and the do's and don'ts are correct in terms of that specific campaign. But where we found the most success is that we don't dictate, you've seen those errors of copy and pasting captions and stuff. Like we allow them to, this is the general creative approach, but, and a piece of that is also educating internally, right? Because I have to answer to our CMO and our head of marketing, and they're like, well, they need to be, these are the features and benefits, and this is what you need to cover. And I'm like, then do a paid media, campaign, because influencers are not a replacement for paid media. It's a different kind of approach. You're trying to hit an audience that you can't personally hit as a brand. So doing that education internally, and that's a lot of the work that I've done every month. It's just like telling people like, hey, this isn't a replacement for a paid media ad or a brand photo shoot. It really needs to be a creative thing. So just because you don't like how this influencer says this, if you actually went back in their content, that's how they talk to their audience, and that's how they're used to speaking. So it actually is more in line with how they normally address their audience, just because you don't put your like personal kind of viewpoint on it either, right? Because a lot of the times we're also looking at and approving content I'm not the target demographic necessarily, right? And when you have some of the old school people who've been in it trying to approve content, it's like, you got to put your 18-year-old hat on. Like, who are you consuming content for, and making sure that you're allowing for that freedom. And that a lot of it is also just doing the work internally too, at a larger brand, and allowing for that to happen, that creative freedom to happen.
If I may also add just a quick thing also, that there are like still a lot of confusion is about the FTC regulations. Each country has different things here in the States. Some companies got big fines because the influencers didn't disclose in a clear way that it was a promoted post. And I think that more and more, now influencers have also their own, new groups to organize when it comes to protection, I'm missing out the term in English, sorry about that, but it's so now also more like insurance companies are starting also to offer coverage on that. And I think that whenever you do a contract, it's super important that everyone is on the same page that the influencer is gonna do everything by the law and clearly put out everything there. That's because no one wants to get in a situation where was the fault of the brand, was the fault of the agency, was the fault of the influencer. So I noticed that maybe some brands or sometimes smaller brands, they oversee certain things on their contract. I think that having something about FTC regulations is definitely super important because we're going in a direction where we all know influencer marketing is not an hobby anymore, right? It's a real proper job. So if you're doing that for any other type of categories, why not also to look into that in a legal way? The same for influencers. So I can see a big future for lawyers, insurances, and many other professionals in these to have and be on the same page that everyone is doing that, legally speaking, in the proper way.
Got it. And so you've got your influencers, you've got your campaign, you've got your creatives, and you're letting it run. And then you've got this problem of how are you managing all these different relationships, budgets, analytics, tracking. We've had always seems like it's a lot of work. And as you say, you're dealing with real people, and yet people probably, clients or, internal clients or external clients, they want, CPIs or CPAs, or they want metrics. How do you square all this circle, and how do you manage a campaign effectively?
Yeah, we've recognized, at least at Reebok, we don't have a huge team of internal resources that are dedicated to influencer marketing. And to be quite honest, it's not the most efficient way to go about it. So we have, found strategic agency partners and tools that can help manage it, because, influencer is not going to wait next 60 days per our global invoicing system to get paid, right? And so we need these partners, these agency partners, and these tools to help us facilitate this new age of marketing where, we do have to release content as soon as content goes live, and we do have to do certain things like creative contracts, and our legal team's super busy with bigger contracts. They're not going to work on this $1,000 contract or this $10,000 contract day in and day out. So we've learned where we are successful is actually investing in getting the budget to help outsource and have really good agency and tool partners that can help bring us to life, because without it, it's nearly impossible to keep track of everything, especially nowadays as influencer, at least even on Instagram or TikTok, on stories, it's fleeting in terms of when you see it, whether you catch it, are you screenshotting it? You really do need to invest in some of those tools and those resources that can help track it for you, or you're going to be missing out on a lot of your KPIs and your metrics that you're going to be reporting against, because, personally, we can't do it all internally, and we don't have the biggest teams in the world to do it either.
Mm-hmm. Any specific tools you recommend that can help with this?
So CreatorIQ has a tracking. You can authenticate in there as a creator. There's plenty of tools like Tagger, Julius. Agencies invest in their own tools and create it. Your media partner agency might also invest in tools. So there's a lot of resources out there in terms of how you can track it. But we use a mix of CreatorIQ and what our agency uses as well.
Got it. And any other comments on campaign management, how to do this efficiently? I guess certainly the two from the agencies will have managed to have some experience of this.
Yeah. So we have a dedicated campaigns team at Go. So they're the ones who really deal with the day-to-day influencer workings. They deal with the contracts, the briefing of the content, all of the approvals. And then once the campaign is live, they will also be tracking and optimizing our content as the campaign progresses. And then once we have all those insights, we then report these learnings to our clients. And then based upon the actual campaign analytics and data, we will get the influencers to provide us with the results around 48 to 72 hours after the content goes live. And this will really help us just to understand the engagements, clicks, views, comments, etc. And then we can sort of compare this to a benchmark, either an industry one or against other influencers of the same sort, or perhaps even a client engagement rate that they provide us with. But obviously TikTok specifically does show growth of content. It's obviously refeeding people that content months later. So we will always go back 1 week later, 2 weeks later, and get an update out of content and then provide that to the client.
Got it. Alessandro, any tips for managing this, all these campaigns, all these creators, all these metrics?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think that there is not a perfect formula. There are so many platforms, different ranges of prices. To be honest, I think that I did maybe 40 different demos. A lot of them, they have like similar features. If you're a brand, it's something. If you're an agency, it's totally something else. If you're running more than, like we do sometimes, more than 100 campaigns at the same time, the same month, the majority of platforms, because of their pricing system and their features, it's a bit difficult to manage only through, let's say, only one platform. So we do have a combination of different things. And sometimes you have to go technical, like API integrations, custom formulas, spreadsheets are talking to each other. It's sometimes it's a mess, but luckily, as also I said before, we also have our dedicated team of campaign managers that do a fantastic job. I am in a privileged, I'd say, position where I don't have to do the daily operation, and every day I say I'm so lucky about it, because they really do spend hours and hours and hours. That is really time consuming. I think that majority of people do not understand the complexity of a campaign because of the different people involved. The payment system, some part you pay it before, some others then thousands of invoices at the end of the year, micro payments. It's seriously that time consuming, and I don't think that there is just one way to do things. In my opinion, and also talking with other experts in the same industry, it's usually a combination of one platform for something, another one for that, and then we use things like Zapier or if this and that to do integration together, because maybe sometimes there are no official APIs for certain things, and if you want to scrape data, it's easier to do that maybe on a spreadsheet sometimes than pay tons of money just for something that you can create by yourself. So I think that each of agency is doing differently, but at the end of the day, it's if you find a way that it works for you and every campaign manager is on the same page, you don't really need maybe the one platform they go to. You can do just a combination of things.
Great. Okay, well, let's try and cover off some of the questions before we wrap up. So we have a question from Vanessa Zogby, and she's asking, how do you decide how much the influencer is going to get paid? Is it based on followers or performance or what? Anyone want to take that?
I would say it completely differs based upon the vertical, who the influencer actually is, the content you're asking them to produce. I would say for TikTok specifically, it is relatively cheap in comparison to the likes of Instagram, YouTube, specifically YouTube, which is very expensive. And then with TikTok, you're going to get a lot for a very little amount. The influencers are relatively cheap. I couldn't say a budget off the top of my head, but I would say the influencers who have really exploded on TikTok as a platform first, they don't really know their worth as of yet, but that's obviously not gonna last that long. At GOAT, we always recommend starting off at a budget minimum of 40K, because that way you're really going to get the best return and you're going to get the best results.
Okay, great. Any other comments on how much you pay them?
David answered it. It's unfortunately, it's not a one size fits all. And it really depends on what you're asking the creator to do and a bunch of other kind of, factors and scenarios and all that kind of stuff. So I do agree, though, that TikTok is relatively cheap. And just from what I've seen on the influencer front, people haven't really realized what their worth is just yet. But I imagine with the built out of marketplace, and as that becomes a bigger kind of deal and paid, you start boosting TikTok with the influencer content. That's where you kind of are going to start seeing a shift eventually, just like Instagram, 7 years ago.
Definitely.
And Sinead is asking, well, how do you foster a positive ongoing relationship between your brand and the influencers? Any specific methods to create that personal relationship? I guess one is giving them money. It's always appreciated. Any other kind of tips for building that, important relationship?
I think just, being in a regular communication with them, whether or not I have an open campaign for them at the moment that they're a good fit for, is, you know, answering your email when they reach out, or making sure that the agency is doing that, that there's a dedicated, you know, maybe account coordinator that is, you know, making sure that people are getting back to them on, you know, what the outline is for the season for a brand like ours. We also tend to add people to gifting lists if they want. So, you know, while we typically are kind of using our campaigns to promote more of our commercial inline product that, you know, is just more easier to access, we know that, hey, if we have a really cool collaboration and we might not be doing a paid influencer program for it because the collaboration itself has enough heat, making sure that those influencers are on the gifting list so that they still kind of get some of the cooler product, even though they might be, you know, paid to promote some of the more commercial products. So that we've seen kind of success in creating that relationship as well.
Any other comments on building relationship?
Yeah, I think it's important to show your that you're listening to those, that you're listening and seeing what they're doing. So a big thing that we would always recommend is looking for influencers, first and foremost, who are already advocates of your product. They're the ones who are going to be already organically talking about your brand. So what you can actually do, and this is a great tactic, is look for those influencers, and then once they have already posted organically, then you loop them in. That's when you lock them in as an advocate and as an actual ambassador for your brand. And that's only going to one, heighten their love for your brand. And two, it's just going to make their partnership with you look even more authentic than it already is.
And I think on what David just said, it is that, you know, exactly like that. Like we work at, and we're still working with Dunkin', with one of our own TikTokers, Cringe Carter here in the States. He promoted the Charlie Brew when he went out, but he was already a big fan. Like, he was doing so many videos of him going, like, you know, in the drive-thru and taking Dunkin'. He was obsessed with it, and so, like, you know, Dunkin' recognized in this TikToker, like, you know, someone that was not just doing that because it was paid. And you can see the community in the content, in the comments, saying, okay, now we want, like, you know, Cringe Carter brew, right? Like, you know, and you know, like, in that way, again, you're going like, you know, it's not just anymore a promotion. It's creating culture and brands together. And yes, so I do definitely agree. If you find someone who's doing that already for free, you know that the DNA of a certain brand is already in the influencer. They are obsessed with it, so they're gonna do the extra mile. So if you're paying for one video, you might do like 3. If you're on Instagram for a couple of stories, we saw people doing 15 with like tons of like link clicks in each of them. Why? Because there is a passion, there is that big love from the influencer to a certain brand. Something that you might not find to maybe someone that is totally new to a brand, that is just be paid to that. So I think that, yeah, if you have that opportunity, I would put it like in top of the list whenever you do like a collaboration with someone.
Great. Well, I'd love to keep going. I think we're out of time. Just a final closing question. On a scale of, well, firstly, I'd like to thank you all for taking part and sharing your insights today, and really appreciate it. And yeah, I hope we can get together in person in the US maybe next year and recreate this. Yeah, and but great we could take part today, and you know, we're reaching 1,122 people now signed up to this, which we'd never fit into a, you know, conference venue in LA or New York. So thanks for taking part. Closing question: on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being scale of 1 to 10, how optimistic are you about TikTok as a channel for marketing in the future? And 1 being MySpace, and 10 basically kind of disappears, and 10 being it completely takes over the world. And, you know, even your proverbial grandmother is on it 54 minutes a day, or whatever the average is.
I'll take a big swing, and I'll say a solid 10. Honestly, I think that what we're seeing with TikTok specifically is a lot of innovation in what they're providing, and you're already seeing the likes of Facebook, who are meant to be the dominator. They're already ripping them off, as they did with, let's be honest, as they did with Snapchat. They are continuously doing that, so it obviously proves that they've got a lot of innovation. They've got a lot of hardworking people that I think they're just going to continue this growth. And then the biggest difference I feel that sets TikTok apart from the likes of Instagram is really this inspiration versus aspiration. On Instagram, you've got heavily curated content, whereas TikTok is just way more authentic and inclusive in its content. You've obviously got your typical performance, your creative, your comedy and education content style on TikTok. But what we're seeing is this emergence of, and I guess I'll call it like the glamorization of everyday mundane. And it's sort of these short clips that are stitched together, almost Pinterest brought to life. And it's showing things from as simple as a daily routine to like pouring your coffee, all in a really aesthetic, pleasing way. But it really speaks to audiences. And I think it speaks to, one, the younger generation, but also to everyone that is currently stuck at home. And then as we start to move out of lockdown, I'm sure we're only going to see more of those like smaller, meaningful moments that we took for granted at one point.
So the 10 from David. Are the two panelists?
I was going to say 10. I don't see TikTok going anywhere anytime soon. I think brands are going to have to. There hasn't been many brand, just like you have your brand social media channels, not maybe from a creator perspective, but that have cracked the TikTok code. Like you have your Chipotle's who have been on it, but it'll be interesting to see where brands go organically for themselves on TikTok, but it's not going anywhere. And I think the sub communities and like the really niche audiences that you can get into, where there's a consumer for everything. One of my favorite followers follows on TikTok is listening to a woman do customer service calls, disgruntled customer service calls. It's hysterical in terms of her tone and how she operates, but like it has nothing to do with my day-to-day. It's just comical. And then I'll flip and learn a cooking thing, right? So I think because of the breadth of all the things that you can find on TikTok, it'll be interesting to see where they go from even just a brand safety perspective, because that has been brought up and that's something that, YouTube was dealing with for a very long time, but I don't think it's going anywhere. I think everybody's going to have to operate and figure out a way to get on the platform and figure out what it means for them, whether it's creator-led or brand-led.
Yeah, last time that was here, I said 11. I'm going to say 11 again. Again, I might be biased on these, but to be honest, I mean, I think that is still just the beginning of TikTok. And why? Because the short form videos, it is not something new, but there are so many new things that are coming. Again, if the social commerce is played well, then you're not just opening up to videos, you're opening to an even more creative economy that we all know what is happening there. A few days ago with the NFT, right? Or the creator economy, everyone now is selling. Like you can really make a living and a good living on social media. So if you give the opportunity to everyone that maybe do not have their own merchandising, or like you can still do money and like make money thanks to the affiliation link. I'm just afraid and I hope that they're gonna manage it properly in terms that if you like it's easy to get spam links all over the place. So I think that the community there, like in the team by TikTok, will have to really find the right way to have a good combination of I am still on TikTok because I enjoy watching videos, and I also can find maybe a link, a clickable link. If I will only find promotions, people might leave because of the more authentic type of place. But again, yes, I said 11. I'm gonna say that because just at the beginning, more brands are jumping on it, more opportunities, a lot of integrations, a lot of partnerships from TikTok all over the world, from transparency center to again, a payment system. I think that can maybe I don't want to say a super app like in China it's happening, but who knows? Maybe it's going in that direction, and I personally can't wait to see that happen.
Great. So that's an average of 10.33 recurring, if my math's right. So very bullish from the team here, and I hope everyone listening feels the same. Thanks everyone for taking part. Thanks to you for listening. We're going to be talking ads next, so stay with us, and thanks again to our wonderful panel. That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Bye.